Good afternoon. I'm getting a little bit of sense of deja vu standing up here again. I hope you won't when I'm finished with my presentation. The Aviation Week Intelligence Network, or AWIN as we call it, is our web portal for high-value paid content. Our customers are aerospace and defense companies, as well as government agencies and airlines. We're strictly a B2B play. We really don't deal in the consumer space. Even on our free website, we're not trying to cater to consumers. Okay, this is a shot of how Aviation Week used to present its brands. Aviation Week magazine, as I mentioned, has been around for 94 years. And some of our other products have pretty rich histories of their own. Aviation Daily started publishing in the 1930s. Business and Commercial Aviation had its golden anniversary 2 years ago. Well, McGraw-Hill built a portfolio of aerospace products, but they were really kind of siloed up until a few years ago. At one time, we had at least five websites, and 3 of them were actually password-protected premium websites that had high-value content, and to get from one to the other, you needed different usernames and passwords, and the systems weren't aligned. So our solution to that was to build AWIN. We launched it in 2002, and it's now in its 3rd iteration. AWIN's won ABM's Neal Award for Best Website twice. And now we have one place where our paying customers can view the content from all of our publications, as well as an online database of 21,000 aerospace organizations. We sell AWIN as a market intelligence service that saves you time and has key high-value data. Our brands are still very important. They're well represented, but it's also important to be focused around the markets that you're serving. A customer may not care if a story was published in Aviation Week in Space Technology or Aerospace Daily if it's a program that he's interested in or working on. So the real value is how we integrate and link our content. And our goal is to help our customers find the information that they need. So we did this through text mining. In order to unlock the value of our content, we needed to use sophisticated technology for adding structure to what's really mostly unstructured content. And we built AWIN without a dedicated staff of journalists or producers to create the content that's on AWIN. They still have their day jobs, which involve largely supporting the print publications that are still responsible for more than 50% of the group's revenue. We've taken shots at manual tagging in the past. It proved to be error-prone, labor-intensive, and hard to keep people focused on doing it, to the point where it's really cost-prohibitive to do a lot of manual tagging, although we do some. We try not to make. Right now, we're really not even too dependent on that manual tagging. It's pretty minor. As your story, commercial aviation, is it defense, etc. And one of our biggest challenges is just driving usage. The contract administrators who are the ones who actually sign the contracts with us want to know when they come up for renewal, how much are people using the site? How many of our employees are registered? How many are using it? And so we want to do everything we can to build usage. So as I mentioned earlier, we're using Themis to enrich our content. This is an example of a story about the Joint Strike Fighter program. And we classify we're only using the entity recognition capabilities right now that Themis has. We did that because we wanted something that could be developed and released quickly. We realize that programs are really important to our customers, programs and finding organizations, finding people. And so we focused on that. We're classifying everything into these two broad classes. So actually, back on here, this story has references to three organizations, the Royal Navy, Lockheed Martin, and BAE Systems, which is a subcontractor on the JSF, and then it has a reference to the Joint Strike Fighter program itself. So the organizations link to the organizational profiles that are in the database. We initially started just trying to categorize about 7,500 of those organizations. We focused on the ones that made the most sense: manufacturers, airlines, military services, commercial airports, and regulatory agencies. Those are the organizations that have roles on the programs or customers for the programs. A lot of the aviation news is around regulatory and route information, so airports are important, and of course the regulatory agencies. And the industry is sort of like a pyramid. You've got a fairly small number of large companies at the top and filtering down to smaller companies that in some cases have 20 or 30 employees. And obviously we're writing a lot more about those larger companies. Most of our stories are written about the 200, 300 largest companies in the industry. The program profiles, or the mentions of programs in articles, link to these program profile pages. We track about 60 programs currently. Those are aircraft and engine programs in the commercial and military sectors. And by using the ability of Themis's Luxit product to recognize entities, we were able to dynamically build these program profile pages almost entirely from existing content. There are 3 tabs on the bottom half of the page. One is program suppliers, the second one is articles, and the third one is specifications for the systems. So, a lot of the programs at the top, there's a program summary and a photo of whatever the product made by the program is. A lot of the program summaries we already had. There were a handful that we had to write, but most of them we actually already had, and so we're repurposing that content. And the same is true for the photos. So easily more than 90% of the content on these program profile pages already existed, but we were able to compile it. And I mentioned before that we had tried manually tagging and manually building products. We had something we called the program tracker several years ago, and it just, we didn't have this technology at the time, and it just didn't work. It was too labor intensive, too hard to keep track of, and wasn't dynamic enough to satisfy the customer. The way this is, if we publish a story tomorrow about the JSF program, we know it'll be on this page. We don't have to make sure that the link's there. In 2011, we'll be adding a 4th tab that will be fleet listings for the aircraft and also for the engines. Other enhancements could include photo galleries and videos, and any kind of other content really that could be categorized. So this has been a real success at driving usage too, because you come to this page, it's got a lot of links, a lot of places where you can go. So how did we do this on AWIN? We used Luxit information analytics. That can tell you what organizations are mentioned most frequently. So when we're trying to figure out which of these 7,500 organizations we wanted to identify most, we looked at information analytics and we saw which ones we were writing about the most, and we focused on developing the rules that identify those. You have to set reasonable expectations. We probably shouldn't have started with 7,500. Maybe we should have started with a smaller number. But a lot of those other ones come up anyway without having to be tweaked. We leverage 2 internal resources and a Themis expert to build the skills cartridge. One of the internal people is a full-time editor of our database who's got about 10 years on the job, and the other is a part-time news editor who also has a master's in library science. So together they brought a great combination of domain expertise and specialized skills. The professional services, first 2 days were actually training us to use the software. And then we brought that person back in a few weeks later to, our people kind of learned what they could, and then bring her in for a 3rd day to both build on the set of rules that we're using and to help them answer some questions. That was really very cost effective doing it that way. You do need adequate resourcing to make something like this work. We've talked a lot about curation today. What they're really doing is curating. They are each spending about 4 hours a week on refining the skills cartridge now. What it really is, a set of rules, use either regular expressions or variants like Boeing 737 or just B737 or 737s or 737-200. So we had to build out those regular expressions to make it work, but it has been successful. So what's next? There's a lot more that we can do. We could use Themis's taxonomy, build taxonomies using the Themis product, or customize existing technologies to build greater value and give our customers better ability to customize their own content. We already have some customization tools, but we could do more if we had taxonomies that were categorizing the content. We can mine our own content to find and update organizational data. We have a limited number of resources working on updating the database. If we could mine our stories to find what's changing, and then again you'd probably have somebody curating, but that would allow us to keep the database more current. We actually had a situation where the administration changed and our listing for the National Security Council didn't change, so we had some out-of-date personnel there. That's the kind of thing that this might have helped us catch. We could also add a lot more people to the database. That's the other thing that our customers ask for a lot, is the names of people. They want to find the right people in organizations. And we could use this to mine the names of anybody who appears in a news story and add them to the database. Also, we're covering 60 programs now. Those are what we deem to be the 60 most important programs, but there are a lot more programs that could be covered. I mentioned these are aircraft and engines. We're not covering any of the avionics or electronics programs. We're also not covering any space programs like the Constellation program. Those could be added. Another area we could cover is information warfare, which is the whole idea of hacking into other people's defense networks and making it harder for them to fight. So those are some of the things we could do, and then we're looking for ideas from our customers, or if anybody here has any ideas they want to share, and I would love to take your questions now. Yes.
Are you using the information that you're now aggregating to feedback into the editorial group to look at trends over time? Or one of the best examples I have of this is there's a dating site called OkCupid, which uses a ton of their statistical information to come to interesting conclusions about what people's dating habits are over time, or different groups' dating habits and such. So because you have this repository of information, are you creating new editorial based around what you know and what you've known over time?
We're not yet. I think that's a good idea. I think we could do a lot. We could do more with that.
And then historically, how you said you some of the publications go back to the 19 teens. How much of that is digitized? Is there a plan for that? Is there some sort of tipping point for what the value is of having stuff that's
Yeah,
mobile?
right now, AWIN goes back to 1997, and that's, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, 97. And that, we really don't get too much call for content from before that, and we are on Nexus back to the 1970s. We started with what we already had in XML, and that seemed to work. We'd actually have to go to Nexus if we wanted to go back further, and there really hasn't been much call for it. Most of the demand is for things that are fairly current, ongoing programs that are more in the development phase rather than just the maintenance life cycle. Just one.
Somewhat related to his last question. You guys still have print publications? I should know that, but I don't.
Oh yeah, sure.
And so related to that, how much of all of this is, you said in the very beginning, transformation to your digital strategy? How much of this is actually driving your print products as opposed to your print products driving this? I suspect the answer is quite a bit.
Good question.
But what we've talked a lot
I'll
about
take the
today,
easy part
and
first.
we've talked a lot about, smart content driving systems like Netflix and all that, but, a lot of people still have the book. And
Yeah.
you've got
And
page
people still
numbers.
love the book. They really do. The 4 magazines are all print products, and they're all profitable. The paid newsletters are now only available electronically. Either we still email out a PDF, so we're still going through all the whole process of creating a print publication, except printing it on paper. We're creating a PDF and emailing that out, but it's also available in ASCII or text. Some people want it in text, email, HTML, and on the website. Yeah, it's still, a lot of, on what we do on AON is we have all of the traditional publications, but we've also, in the last 2 years, we started doing news just for the web. And so we're doing stories throughout the day, and then really versions of some of those stories end up in the daily newsletters that are sent out. And we're trying to align the newsletters more carefully with AWIN so that they're sort of a snapshot of, hey, we're curating this newsletter of what we think the most important stories from the day for this market are. And that's because the customers still want it. Okay. Thanks, Seth.